Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Get it on! Welcome back to Faster U4 brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. So, we're going to go bike racing on the weekend, chaps and ladies. And this is the start of the big series for spring, the North Island Trust House Team Series, brought to you by George Sandoval, purveyor of fine cycling races since ages ago. Crazy Chilean doing a great job. All right, let's talk about course one. Thoughts and feelings on tactics and teams. Who's looking good? Who's not looking so flash? Who to look out for? Some dark horses in there, one or two in particular. Very dark horses indeed. All right, so let's have a look here. Team FitLab making the, if you're looking at the screen, the cover models for the North Island Team Series booklet. Scott McDonnell, resplendent in blue, helping me out last year. All right, so we have got a bunch of rules and regulations. Event 1, Sunday the 9th of September. So this is in almost exactly 80 kilometre. Not 80.1, not 79.9, 80.0 kilometre rolling type of a course around Lake Wairarapa. If you haven't done this course, it's the flattest of the 5 North Island Team Series races. So map here, if you're looking at it, start in Featherston, south down to the bottom of the lake, comes out a little bit heading northeast to Martinborough, where it turns and comes back. So probably the wind is looking like more southerly for this weekend, which will be more of a headwind on that first 30 kilometres or so, or 20 kilometres down to the southern end of the course, and that might stop my thoughts are sort of from a coaching perspective, what we talk about when I'm talking to riders, some things to keep in mind. I'll just go through a few of those to give you an idea of what to prepare for. There's a good chance that if it's a headwind, especially in an early part of a race like that, it'll stifle attacks. Having said that, some of the riders who are present, especially in Master 1 and 2 grades, will be very dangerous in breakaways, and so and super strong. So, point being, I don't think you can just assume that no breakaways will happen or will be nullified by the bunch. When it turns at the bottom of the lake, of course, that will become more of a cross tailwind. There is a small, near the bus, in the, I don't know, what's the elevation here? You can't really see it. Maybe at the 40k mark, just after that, there's a small rise and turns sharp left, which some guys cock up sometimes and ride past. I don't really know why. Sort of a notorious corner on this course for guys forgetting to turn. And it's a very short rise, really. I mean, there's a little climb there, and I don't know why people think that it's an important part of the course. Maybe it's because there can be very strong crosswinds after it, and if you do come off the wheel on this little climb, you know, you kind of pay disproportionately for it. There's a flat, fast section up to Martinborough. Then the kind of most interesting part is the final 20 k's from Martinborough to Featherston, roughly. There is a climb, I think it's called the escarpment climb or something, just out of Martinborough, which is about, I don't know, it might only be sort of 50 metres in elevation. It's quite short and sharp. It's really only a minute, 2 minutes of climbing, but it's very hard. The top guys will be at well over 6 watts per kilo on that climb. A lot of guys get caught out maybe being in the gutter, not paying attention and being near the front when that climb starts, and because it's pretty close to the finish, it can be very decisive, and it's where selections, I think, is the most likely scenario for the most important selections to be made. Last year, in the same course round the lake race where I was 3rd or 4th or something, Ryan Christensen stormed across to us in a 3-man breakaway up there and left everyone else behind. And if you're a very good climber, you can make use of that, even though it's a short climb, close to the end, relatively steep, pretty decisive, so watch for that. The run into Featherston is going to be likely some sort of cross tailwind, so it could be fast. There will probably be selections on the road, and it's likely to be some version of a small bunch sprint for the win. Some things to think about in sprints like that are when, typically if it's a headwind, you want to sprint later, and vice versa. Tailwind, you can sprint earlier, or alternatively, if you're feeling really good, maybe try to haul off the front in the final kilometre or 2 kilometres and try to keep the gap, something like that. If the headwind is too strong and you try that, you won't get very far off the front. And even though you'd think it should be equally as hard for the chasers to catch you, there's probably something about the psychology of, probably one is psychology in that you're physically that much closer on the road, so people are more keen to haul you in. But the other part is that probably the drafting effect of more than one person, of a group of dudes on the road, has more of a pronounced effect when you've got effectively a higher wind speed coming at you. So if you're on your own, of course, there's no drafting effect. If you're in a group, you get a drafting effect, of course, from anyone in front of you. Everyone knows that. But you also get a really significant effect from guys around you and behind you especially. There's good evidence that I saw a study where you get a measurable drafting effect from a rider riding up to, I think it was 15 or even 20 metres behind you. And I think with conditions like, assuming conditions like wind, I guess, they probably had in the model as 0, and they probably had maybe some other things to control for, but it's fascinating to see. And, it's kind of the sort of thing you can sort of feel on the road. If you look at guys in big bunches and races, you can have riders expending a lot of energy off the front and breakaways. And if you look at some of the power data in Strava from some of the pros in very high profile races, if they have a day where it's perhaps a flat day for sprinters, they're a GC climber or something like that, they can often expend, average less than 150, 200 watts for a long stage. They're just sitting there getting drafted along. So drafting's super important, and probably the only other thing about this course is down that from the bottom of the lake to Martinborough, maybe not, chances of crosswinds, and the crosswinds, because they're southerly, likely to push people into the gutter, coming more predominantly from the right hand. It won't be, because it's a tail cross, it won't be a big effect. Possible chance of some teams forming echelons and putting it in the gutter there. So the idea is, you can imagine if the wind your angle is coming from your right, we're riding on the left hand side of the road here, of course. If you have riders who are riding very close to the left hand side of the road in the gutter, so very close to it, it's very hard to shelter. You don't get so much shelter from those riders drafting as you would if they were riding a little bit to the right of you. And of course, vice versa, the same thing happens on the other side of the road. Imagine if the wind is coming from your left shoulder, you're riding along, and someone is riding on the white center line. Well, really, that should be, you shouldn't be able to go across that center line. You should really treat that, for safety's sake, as also the side of the road. What does happen in practice is a lot of guys end up crossing that white line so that they can shelter a little bit back into the right of the rider in those scenarios. And in worst case scenarios, especially on this part of the lake, I've seen it multiple times, guys in the gutter on the other side of the road. So basically literally driving straight into traffic. Now, that's not very safe. So let's not do that. And I suspect if you are riding on the wrong side of the road, you know, every year we get warnings from the commissaires to say, unless it's temporary, there's a good reason for it, you've got to be on the right side of the line, or the left side of the line as the case may be. You'll be DQ'd, and there's always this sort of threats of that. I think this year the commissaires will take that really seriously, and you could well find yourself disqualified from the race if you are unreasonably riding on the wrong side of the road. And you know, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, okay, there's the safety factor, which when you think about it, it's probably like only really a safety factor of the person driving the other way is a psychopath. On the other hand, we don't want to piss off other road users and have some scenario where it's even more restrictive to run races. As it is, one of the last week's race at Mangaroa that the Wellington Masters Cycling Club was running, one of the first road handicap races of the season, the Mangaroa Cup was cancelled, or hopefully just postponed, due to the fact they couldn't get a traffic management plan signed off in time. So there is a lot of bureaucracy potentially that could come into play if we can't kind of be just some respectful about how we kind of ride on the roads, thoughtful of other road users. I always put this scenario in my head. You know, don't imagine, you know, some douchey farmer. Imagine it's kind of like your granny, or imagine it's some young person learning to drive or something. And let's make things a bit easier for them. You know, you'd help those people cross the road, or you'd be thoughtful about them in any other scenario in life. Why not we just not freak them out by riding at them at 50k an hour on the wrong side of the road in like a bunch of 100 cyclists? It's probably the way I look at it. So that's the course. That's what I think. Let's look at teams. We have got teams all up on the website here. Masters 2 is by far the biggest grade this year. All of those. A lot of really strong guys in there. Masters 3 and Masters 1, I don't know, they look about the same. Not that big, but pretty deep teams. A surprise this year is that there's not an elite grade, so some of those riders who might otherwise have ridden that will be amongst the Masters grades, which is all that there is. So in my team, we have got Ben Copsey, who crashed last year, kindly managing the team, driving, doing all that administrative stuff. There's a man who will deserve a DB after the end of this series, maybe even a garage project if I'm going to splash out. Me, Scott McDonnell, Andrew Jamison, 3 FitLab coaches. By the way, he's not riding the series, he's probably too young. Recently had Brad Evans join the FitLab family as a coach. Welcome aboard, Brad Evans. Brad, for those who don't know, carries with him a very good record, racing on the road, winning Tour of Southland, Tour of Tasmania, lots of big races, excellent sprinter, excellent tactician, a good just excellent all-round rider. If you, I'll be looking to have some discussions with Brad to sort of pick his brains for thoughts and feelings about tactics and notions about how to better race on the road. And for all our FitLab clients, they're going to benefit from Brad's experience coming through Brad or coming through any one of the other coaches. I'm excited about that. Tim Dalglish, Ben Knight, Lee Campbell, Chris Sutherland, Urian Gertz, John Grimwood. Basically a nice balanced team. Climbers, time trialists, a couple of us there, potentially for our high in the GC. So Scott McDonnell, for those who don't know, is a train. A lot of those guys are very, very good. We have a Rivet Racing. The riders I really like in Rivet, Matt Sharland can go really well, especially on those sort of climbs I was talking about before. Kind of a strong, all-roundish team. They're missing a couple of riders they might have had in the past, but Steve McKinstry, strong as well. MTF Finance, powered by Cycle Nation, the biggest, probably, well, a couple of the biggest riders here for the sprints. Nicholas Monroy, not really, doesn't seem to go uphill that well. It might struggle in certain conditions, but that is a man who tactically and very powerful in a sprint, a good guy to watch. He won the first round last year and will be excellent sprinter. Gary Hall's really strong all-rounder, Stuart Kilmister as well. Brendan Vesti, I noticed, down for that team. Brendan was a pro rider in the USA, things like Mercury, I think, and other high-profile teams back in early 2000s, I think. Excellent climber, and presumably class like that doesn't just disappear with a few years not being a pro. Be afraid. So here's a couple of big teams. Mayo, GP, Tej Knutsford is always very good. Hayden Lawrence, old-timer like me. Dave Rowlands and Brendan McGrath, the two biggest hitters on this team. And Brent Backhouse, just classy, always surprises. Has a weird long sprint. He has this move where he just keeps sprinting. You assume that you've ridden him off your and you look and he's still there, and he's still there, and he's still there. And then he passes you 45 seconds into a 900 watt sprint. You're like, what the hell? It's the hot ticket for him. Brendan and Dave, kind of similar riders, just powerful, good all-rounders, and probably favourites for the series. Wheel Works. Bring along Andy Hagen, who has been in probably one of the top road races in Wellington in the last 5 years, and last year, not really racing a lot on the road, focusing on cross, maybe even a bit of mountain bike, I think. I don't know what his form's going to be like. He's a bit of a dark horse. Tristan, always very strong. Gavin McCarthy, good mountain biker, good climber. I don't think he'll be there when it's very heavy in the gutter, but he's a good, surprising rider. Callum Kennedy, good all-rounder and excellent climber. But look at this name, Kate McElroy. So a female lining up in the Wheelworks team, which is great to see. The only thing, well, I know very little about Kate, but one thing I do know is about a year ago, maybe two, we have an event called the Wednesday Worlds. Goes around the bays and finishes up Happy Valley. There was this one day, we're all hauling pretty hard. This is at lunchtime on a Wednesday. We're hauling, hitting pretty hard around the bays. We're hitting each other up pretty hard. Comes to Happy Valley. Happy Valley is traditionally where everyone just basically forms this massive train at 450, maybe 400 watts, 350 watts, 400 watts. Sits there at about their threshold power or just above, and people just keep dropping off as they die in a pool of their own feces and brain matter. Well, on this day, Kate McElroy went off the front, had about a 20-second lead, and because we were doing the aforementioned train, and because she's a woman, I think we all kind of assumed that there was no way she could maintain that pace. She just kept going. We didn't catch her. She won the Worlds that day. And I was a little taken aback, as I think a number of riders were, about that is not just power to weight. That is just power, maybe aero. Yeah, be afraid of Kate McElroy, gents. Right, Masters 2, big grades. FFC looks like an okay team. Jeff Graham's good. He'll be good on that team. THT, so this will be one of the better teams. Ho Buke, second last year, always really strong. Good punchy little rider, good little sprinter. Jonathan Leonard, the just a total train, will be very good there. Mike Stewart, good time trialist. We've got Lone Star again from Palmy North. Don't really know too many of those guys. Kiwi Velo, who looks good there? Tim Renner, he's a good rider. He'll be strong. Esco Wiltshire, just coming back from the Worlds. He would have learned a thing or two tactically. Pack and Safe Kilburnie. Don't know too many of those guys. P&P, so this will be, again, one of the stronger teams. Rob Kilvington, one of the favourites, I imagine, for the series. John Carron, excellent climber. Colonel Wood, Crow Champion. This is a pretty good lineup, guys. And Jason McCarty, who's gone up to Master 2, rode for FitLab a couple of years ago. If Jason has some form, real punchy rider, it will be great to see him do well. Tararua Builders, don't know too many of those guys. Luxury Cycle Tours, it's like a small team. Velo Ronnie, so here's one of the other big teams. Look at that, here's Gary Anderson, Rob Gemmell, Tim Carswell. That's a pretty, if those guys all turn up, that will be probably the favourite for Master 2, Gary having won it. Certainly last year, maybe the year before. Just all-round class. A guy like Tim Carswell as well. My humble tip is to not be in some sprint scenario where you are against Gary Anderson and Tim Carswell. You will likely lose. Having said that, there's some good wheels for you. Bike Manawa 2. And Capity. Oh, Capity's looking good. Probably not like the absolute header riders like Gary Anderson, but super deep. Rawlinson, Proudfoot, Mark Donald. Was it Mark with a breakaway last year for most of race 3 with Mark Donald? Not a huge guy, but he just keeps going. Sort of like the, I don't know, he just, he was just an excellent, strong all-round rider. I don't know what his top end's like, but he was riding really well that day, which is good. Paul Rawlinson, probably known most for his... Sorry, Paul, if you're listening to this, but he's one of these guys. I don't know if he's got like maybe one leg shorter than the other or something, where his position looks a bit weird, and you can't quite put your finger on why, but he's a savage on the bike. He always comes up in form for big races, and it is a real surprise. As I'd say, you know, hey, look, Chris Froome looks pretty weird on the bike when he's peeling up outdoors, but it seems to work for him. So those are the teams I would say for Master 2. Master 3, probably like a, I don't know, it looks overall like a weaker field. Then again, you get surprised by these older riders. I really like Optimal Performance. Steve Chapman's always solid. Malcolm Allard, always solid, surprising sprinter. I like Steve O'Keefe for this, excellent all-rounder. He's not climbing so well at the moment, but I think his form's coming up. I really like him, and he's one of my picks for podium. Neil Harwood, Ollie Ferry, who just won a big race in Aussie. That's a solid team, dudes. I like that team for team overall, and I like it for podium. Tararua Builders sponsoring another team. It's good, don't know too many of those guys. Capity sponsoring another team, that's excellent. We've got Kiwi Velo sponsoring another team, excellent. I like Steve Orchard in this team. Steve's kind of known as this, just this diesel time trialist. And if there's a man who you want on your team for potential breakaways or doing some work, yeah, Steve Orchard, Excellent rider. Luxury Cycle Tours. Don't know too much about them. And we've got Velo Ronnies, again, sponsoring another team in Master 3. That's excellent. Paul Lewin's good. A bunch of good guys in there. So, for Masters 3, I like Optimal Performance. For Masters 2, I think it's probably Velo Ronnies, maybe closely followed by PMP and Capity. I would like to see FitLab do well in Master 1. There's going to be a very big battle between Mayo, Wheelworks, and FitLab, I think, in Master 1. That's what I think. So I'm looking forward to that. Rijo is in 8:30 at Featherston School. Let's all... one more kind of annoying word about safety. How did I turn out to be the safety guy? I don't know. Everyone thinks I'm this wildly, impolitically correct, Trump-supporting maniac. So the fact that I spent half of these talking about making proclamations about safety is as much of a surprise to me as it is you. However, yeah, there's high potential for the aforementioned riding on the wrong side of the roadness, and there is high potential for very fast bunch sprinting, which has in the past caused some accidents in all grades last year and the year before. If you're not confident, you don't want to be there, don't be there. That's fine. If you are, just ride strong, fast, confidently. And you know what? Maybe when you're out training rides, I like to get my guys sometimes, some of my coach riders, to do some drills where, like on the track, you might ride up against each other, push a little bit on shoulders, on purpose. Maybe do this move. Here's a drill for you where nice big open safe road somewhere. Sit up, take one hand off the bar, or even both. Put your arm around the person next to you, riding along, and ride along smoothly. And it gives you great confidence for when, wheels do touch, bodies do touch a little bit in high-speed bunch situations. That's not a problem. The problem, like anything, arises when dudes freak out and swerve, and then that's when it goes bad. Let's all stay upright, shall we, chaps? All right, so good times. As always, brought to you by FitLab, Tail Nutrition, Biomass, Capital Cycles. If you'd like to catch up with me, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz. Go to our new and improved website, fitlab.co.nz. Have a look at what Andrew's done there. Go and check out Brad's bio on there. You'll be surprised. His list of Palmaris is very long. And as always, I'll see you on the weekend.